Glenn. I'm not on your program, so I'm actually an invisible woman, so you could just pretend I weren't here after this because you have no evidence that I was. But I'm the chair of a group called the Caribbean Social Forum, which is based here in the Royal Borough of Greenwich, and we meet once a week on a Thursday in Woolwich. And we started off with 12 people when I first took ill with these crutches. Woke up one day, my legs stopped moving, and that was it. And it wasn't as easy as that, but in time you've learned how to accept look at what you've got left rather than looking at what you've actually just lost. And so the group started with 12 and grown with a database now of over 600 members, and predominantly from the Caribbean, but not exclusively from the Caribbean. So we do get other people that are not from there. But one thing that happens is that one thing we've all got in common, and even in this room, is that we all eat. I could tell. I could tell. But food means different things to different people. And whilst we talk about oral history, and it means that you give someone your story, if you just give words, which is 26 letters, that's all you're giving them, is 26 letters of words. And every word that you speak and listen to or see comes from just 26 letters. But it's not if you know those 26 letters, it's how you put them together to form words. And depending on what words you use would mean a different thing to one person to another. And the fact that someone could be articulate in using big words, which I'm not very good at, so that's why you'll find all my words are just over 4 letters and that's it. Okay? It will have a different meaning to the people you're listening to. So when we talk about oral history, it's not enough for you to say, I could take your story, write it down, put it in a book and go. No, we're connecting with the people that we're taking oral. It's something that's coming from them, from the outside to us. And it is an exchange of feelings, an exchange of history, an exchange of connection. It's not just 26 letters that we form together, take them from them, to put in the book, to go somewhere else. No, it's more than that. It's more about us connecting with the people that we're connecting with, and it becomes personal. So with our connection with oral, and Dave knows this is true, it was so important the Caribbean Social Forum took responsibility of our own oral history, because we understand the language. If I was to show you this picture, everyone, what is it? What are they? Come on, you must know this. Huh? Mangoes. So that would be right. However, it wouldn't be right for everybody. Do you know there's over 5,000 different mangoes? Do you know the most expensive mango actually comes from Japan? They cost about $5,000 for that mango. But if I was to say to you the words beefy, blackie, Bombay, East India, Green Gorge, Haddon, hairy, Julie, kidney, long, number 11, robin, stingy, turpentine, what would you say they are?
Gin.
Gin. Okay, I'm obviously going to the wrong place on a Saturday night. But basically, these are just a list of 15 names of the mangoes in Jamaica. That's one island. And these are the names. So when you say to someone, oh, you're eating a Julie, to someone, they know what you're talking about. Now, if you're not from Jamaica, which my parents are from Barbados, Julie would mean nothing to me in Barbados, even though we're all from the same islands. So what people say, oh, you're all Caribbean, yes, but one size don't fit all. And so often in oral history, people look at things as one size fitting all, and it just does not. Because you're successful at taking a story from someone from one country doesn't mean you're going to be as successful taking a story from another one. And if it's just a story that you're taking, then are you really doing justice to the person you're taking it from, or to the people that you want to take it to? That's my question. And I'm not willing to talk and give things to people for myself unless I know that I understand the journey that's led me to this particular story. I understand the journey of my mum, who left Barbados at a young age of 20. This is my sister Cheryl over there. And I understand the story of my mum. She left young, she never left the country before. She came to England on a boat to do a nurse. She was treated with hostility and all sorts of things. I know how that feels. When she tells her story when she got here, there was no mangoes when she got here. So she had to find orange and pretend it was a mango, not the same. There was no Chocho. Oh, what's another name for Chocho? Come on. Sorry? No? Another name for Chocho. Now, how many of you know any people from the Caribbean? Come on, I'm not embarrassing you. This is just an open question. You meet now an 80-year-old Caribbean person that you're talking to, and they tell you that you show them this. What's another name for Chocho? Christophine. That's another name for it. So you could meet someone from Jamaica that might call it Crocho, but if you meet someone from St. Vincent, they'll call it Christophine. Is it wrong? No. It's just the way in which things are interpreted from one island to another, and there's 28 different islands, and each person will have a different name to call something. So whilst you're not taking it, and you call it Christophine, you're talking to someone that's old, that's got dementia or something. They don't know it as Chocho. But when it's personal, you take the time to know beyond what you want to know. Oral history to me is not about what you want to know from me, but what I can tell you about me. And quite often it's the opposite way around. What's this? This is not a food lesson, but it would help you.
Jackfruit.
No?
No.
Custard apple.
Sorry?
Custard apple.
Custard apple, correct. There's another name for it, sweet sop. And when you can get this here, so you can all go shopping at Junior's store in Woolwich, and you can buy it. You can buy it. I think you guys will get this one right. Sugar cane. And all you guys that like tea and coffee that put those little packs in, this is what it looked like before it gets processed. Okay? So this is sugar cane. You know sugar first came into this country from the Caribbean? And that's how they made a lot of money in this country. So when you go to Greenwich and you see all the Queen's House, you'll find that the space that all the sugar cane used to come here. Sugar was a sort of for posh people. Now you could just get it in a packet. One of the richest men in this country has got a plantation in Barbados, and he's never been to Barbados, called Drake Hall, and he's got the biggest sugar plantation in Barbados and gives nothing back to the island because he inherited it from slavery, and most of the sugar goes to Tate and Lyle. So Barbados have to end up buying their own sugar outside of the Caribbean rather than bringing it in. So when you talk about oral history, you're not just talking about sugar cane and sugar, you're talking about the pain and all the journey about sugar. Does that make sense to everyone? If anyone disagrees with me, Phil, don't worry. I can't run after you because I walk with crutches. So you can say what you want and run faster than me. So what is this?
Cashew.
No? Has anyone got any Jamaican friends? Who's got a Jamaican friend? Yeah? Okay. What's one of the favourite things I like to eat for breakfast?
Ackee.
Ackee and what?
Saltfish.
Yes, so this is what? And you only know it in a tin. Yeah. Most people only see it in a tin. But this is what the actual ackee looks like before. Now this one is not opened. So when it's not open, you can't eat it. If you open it, if you try to cook that, it will poison you. You can only eat ackee off a tree when it's open and you can see the black seeds. So when you're doing again oral history, you talk about ackee. Some of the older people that I deal with only remember from this, not from a tin. Does that all make clear? So we've got more mangoes. A bit different to the last mango, isn't it? Those were yellow and these are more green. Now let me see if anyone's going to know this one. Come on, you all have had this, but you normally have it with Cadbury's. Cocoa, hot chocolate. Okay? So when people want hot chocolate in the Caribbean, they don't use Cadbury's hot chocolate. They have the tree, they pick the natural thing. So therefore, when you get to certain ages, people would look at this and know what it is. So you could then generate conversations with them based on things that they're accustomed to seeing, not here and now, but what they were seeing before. But the only way you can actually do that is if you've had a conversation, and if you listen, and you let them tell their story, and you learn from their stories rather than you thinking you're teaching them instead. Now, these are some ingredients, but what do you think these ingredients are used for?
Stew.
Who says stew? Yeah, you're near enough right. Every Saturday, most Caribbean people will make something called soup. Yeah? And they'll boil their meat, their vegetables, and that's what they use. They use things like this, which is, what is this? This is, sorry? Breadfruit, yeah? Breadfruit. Because in the days gone by, this was a staple diet for a lot of the people that was in slavery because it's got carbohydrates. And therefore they worked the land, so they burnt it off. But people still keep to eating things like this because it's traditional. Sometimes, even if it's bad for them, because they've got diabetes, they still eat it because it's something they get accustomed to. It's a bit like that story about the person that was putting the ham in a pot, and every time they put the ham in the pot, the wife would cut off the end of the ham, and the husband would think, why are you doing that? And she said, my mum always done it, so he thought, can't wait to see the mother-in-law and find out why she does it. And then he done it again. And the mother said, oh, my mum. So he thought, oh my goodness, it goes right back. And eventually, when they spoke to the grandmother said, that's because we didn't have big enough pots. Yeah? So in the early days, when they only had small pots, they had to cut off the heel. But now, 30 years later, you can have bigger pots as you want, and we're still doing it. And some things becomes tradition, it's embedded in you, even when it's not good for you. And this is the same thing that happens to a lot of people, which is a high level of diabetes in the Caribbean and Africa, because they still continue to eat the food that they were trained to eat through generations. And this, yeah. What's this? And it says it on the tin. No? Oh my goodness, what colour is it? Green bananas. But this one is plantain. So you can fry it, boil it, roast it, all sorts of things. What's this? Yeah. And you know there's all different kinds of yam. There's more than one. This is the one you get here, but you can get black yam, yellow yam. There's about 1,000 different yams, but not in this country. This? Yeah. And again, it's all different. So there's over 400 different sweet potatoes. And this? Saltfish, which goes with what? Okay, good. You passed that bit. So basically, again, I've chosen to use food because it's something that we're all accustomed to. And if I was to go, when my mum worked as a district nurse, a lot of her patients when she was in her 20s or 30s were white people that were here. And therefore they had fish and chips, or they had sausage and mash, and they had the gherkin and the saveloy and the pie and chips. So, and they talked about the war. My mum could relate to them, because in the Caribbean you're trained about the English history, so even though you're not from there, you still knew a lot about it, to be able to have a conversation with those older people. And as a child, my mum would take us around with her to 6 weeks holidays, and Mr. Salisbury, who was one of the old men my mum looked at, would sit down and tell me all about the times of the war and all the things he used to do. He taught me how to read bookie sheets, to pick horses, and all things like that. I didn't do this Grand National on Saturday, but I can relate, but as now the first generation of Caribbean people are getting old in this country, my mum's now 85, their stories not known by everybody. And it's only known by their children. And they don't know, and they've got two stories. They've got the stories of the Caribbean and the stories of being here the first time. My parents came here in their 20s. They've spent more time in this country than they have in the Caribbean, which is why sending someone back through the windrush thing, at the age that they are, if they get dementia, they know nothing about Jamaica or nothing about Barbados, they only know about here. They know about the fish and chips more than they might know about rice and peas, if that's their diet. So we've done a thing recently, and this exhibition was done at the Heritage Gallery with the University of Greenwich. And we got our members to talk about food that meant something for them when they were growing up, something that had a story to it. And it was really interesting to think, when they talk about macro rundown, and you can read them afterwards if you wish, and it would talk very much about her grandmother, where they lived, had lots of fish, and the fishermen would come and do the mackerel, and their grandmother would get a big pot outside and become a festive family thing. And as she talked about the story, and that it brought tears to her eyes because it brought her back to her place. But not only did it bring tears to her eyes, it brought tears to several other people's eyes, because they could all relate to the same story. Why? It was what? Personal. Now, if you had the same reaction to the story, it would be a different feeling for you because you're not from there. You might not understand the journey that goes with it, the ingredients. It isn't that when you put food in a pot, it's not the big pieces of meat or big veg, but the salt and the little black pepper that makes a difference, and yet those are the bits that disappear. But without those little salt and pepper, then the flavour of the meat and the vegetables has no flavour. When you're dealing with someone talking about micro rundown, it might seem big, but it's a little flavour things that you don't see that makes a difference. And those are the things that you know when it's personal.
15 minutes.
Yeah, is it up?
Another 5.
5, okay, I'll talk fast. Okay. Same thing when you see green figs and saltfish, that's a national dish for St. Lucia. And you know, when people talk about that, again, it brings back memories, it brings back jokes, it brings back laughter, it brings back all sorts of things in someone's mind. So when we get someone coming into the forum that's got dementia, and we know they're from St. Lucia, we can change our accents as well to suit. I'm born here, but if someone was from St. Lucia, I might try and say, so when Elijah gets green figs and saltfish, and I would change my dialect so that oldies listening or she listening to me with a dialect, they're also knowing I'm talking to something that relates to them. Again, what is it? What did I say? It's personal. Okay, sows of fly fish, my parents come from Barbados, and sows, again, and you'll find a lot of the foods in the Caribbean could often be seen as poor man food, because often in the slave times, they wasn't given the best crops of the food, they were given the bits that people didn't want. Mackerel was seen as a cheap fish, even in this country. So therefore, it was a poor man's food. But when you put a bit of black pepper in it, a bit of bonnet pepper in it, it could taste like a rich man food, which is why Gordon Ramsay is now going there and saying oxtail, or what you know about oxtail, man? He just took the people's recipe and made oxtail so expensive now. It used to be cheap meat, but now it's more expensive. And ackee and saltfish. So when you look at sows, it's done with pork, you boil it, you pickle it, you give it flavour. Flying fish can only be found in Barbados and Trinidad waters. And again, so this is my story of when I went to see my dad, and he cooked sows for me and flying fish. And my first time to Barbados was in '86. So it was a big new experience for me to know. I expected to go there and find mud huts, poor people. My grandmother had a big house and 3 ensuite bathrooms. I was like, is this all your house, Granny? She go, well, who else you expect to live here, Pam? And I'm thinking, wow, it wasn't because I didn't know that people live like that, because my interpretation living here was that they were poor, but they were far richer, not with material wealth, but richer in their food and their talking and their conversations and the stories. And that's what we try to bring in to the things that we've done with the oral. So you've got all the food stories, and we've done this exhibition twice, and it's been extremely successful because other islands and other countries has actually come in and shared their stories to what they do with these ingredients in their own country. And then we've got the stories here, which is from motherland to mother country, another thing that we've done at the university, but we've also done it in other places as well. And these are stories of how it felt for people to leave home. This guy, Esmond, he was 4 or 7 years old, I think he was, when he watched his dad leave. And I asked him, how did it feel when you stood watching your father leave? He said he stood there until he saw that the boat left and he could not see the boat anymore. And he waited. And then a year or two later, his mother done the same. And eventually he was put on a plane, I think, on a boat to come over on his own as a little boy. And he had on short little khaki shorts. In December he landed in England, and he had to sit at Victoria Station. And in the Caribbean, if someone tell you not to move, you don't move. So when his parents said to don't move till someone call your name, someone said don't move till someone call your name, he didn't move. And he and his brother ended up getting frostbites. By the time the parents got to him from Birmingham to Victoria, he was so dramatised, he didn't talk for absolutely ages. When you take that story and you listen to it from a black person point of view and know that journey, it's no longer just a story. It's what? What is it? Personal. So these are the stories of some of our members that we took down. We say from motherland to mother country, how they felt before they left their motherland, how they felt when they got here, and what they've done at the end. And it's a journey that each one of these people has actually taken. The Windrushers generation is what people like to call it. The Windrush is a boat that had 1,082 people on it. The Windrush is not people. People that came on the boat. And truth be known, it weren't all Jamaican people. The boat started in Trinidad and the last pickup was in Jamaica. But people get the little stories, just like the ham on the hill, and they keep doing it without knowing the truth of the full thing. So this is the Caribbean Social Forum. I'm Pamela Franklin, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
I said that, I found it quite impenetrable when I started doing research. So I would like to see ways that, anybody can find something that gives them an into the archives, that gets them excited. Because I did go to the British Library website, listen to some more histories, but I was like, I don't think this one's going to have what I need in it, and it's an hour long. I haven't got time to sit and listen to it all, So is it? I don't know. Is the catalogue need more sort of detail, or is it something like that, or how do we understand them more? Even when I went to the Bishopsgate Institute to do a bit of research, I did find it quite difficult to know where to start. I was like, what am I looking for? I don't know. What have they got? And they're very accessible, very friendly, but I think it's still quite difficult to access archives for somebody like me who hasn't got a clue, who just goes there, I want to do a bit of research, but I don't know what or how. So finding ways of making it accessible just for your average person with no archival knowledge would be great. And help other people take it as as believing that they should put their stories into them as well.
Pamela, do you want to reflect on that?
I think that what Paul said, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, my good friend's called Paul Green as well.
Yeah.
I think what Paul said is absolutely right. I remember ringing up the Brixton Archives when I wanted some information for what we was doing for this dementia. And it was so tedious to be able to ask questions, and the way it was documented, and the language they were using was not the language that I understood. And I just want a picture of Brixton from 1962. That's what I want. And it sounded easy to me, but it wasn't easy on the other end. So I ended up not getting a picture for it at all, until eventually we got through to someone at Danforth Town Hall to ask them, and then they wanted us to pay for it, for which I was really annoyed about, and eventually we got it for free. But it was just tedious. But for us now, let's speak a language. If you want a picture of Brixton, then fine, don't give me no technical terms, because like I said, I can only just about finish 4 to 5 letters, and even bigger than that, I'm totally confused. So I just need to make sure that the Caribbean Social Forum puts together something that speaks in the language that people can understand. And whilst we might all be in this room, we all speak a different language, and language is not just foreign. Language is a journey of life that we've gone through, and that journey of life will tell us each how we're going to say something and understand something. So if in the Caribbean Social Forum someone comes in for Caribbean thing, I know that language in modes, and if I don't understand the patois in Jamaica, I always can find a Jamaican next to me that does, or someone that's from Solution that can. What they're asking for, and they could tell me juicy, or they're talking about a mango. Okay, yeah, then I've got mango. But if I was to say that to someone in the British Library, they'd be looking at me thinking, what the hell is juicy? They wouldn't know. So I think making it into a language that's accessible for us in the forum is extremely important to us.
Also, I just want to add about sort of role models, which is what's sort of coming to me. We do need, like young people growing up do need, I think of the sort of work that Paul and I do, kind of role models. And I think that despite the fact that we have lots of different sources of information now available to us, actually the gatekeepers of that information are becoming more and more sort of self-interested. And so there is more of a need to really sort of look at archives and how those archives are kept, where there aren't the kind of barriers, that people can kind of access them, so that there are, diverse role models that people can really relate to anyone's story. I think we're in danger of limiting role models, despite this kind of techno scene that we find ourselves in now.
But you've got to be approachable as well, and often people are not approachable. They put their titles in front of them, they put their qualifications, they put their initials after their names, they build all these barriers prior to even someone meet me. When someone meets me, I'm Pamela, that's it. I'm not Pamela the chair, and I don't have any initials to put after my name, not even once to be ready before it. But I'm Pamela, and that's first and foremost. If you put all these other things around it, I'm Dr. this, I'm not taking away from your academia and your achievement, I think it's great. But that is, someone's coming to you, they're coming to you as a person, not has that unless you are a medical doctor, then I need to know that you specialise. You know, you're not going to be a doctor in engineering and I'm thinking I'm going there for gynecology or something. It's totally wrong. So apart from that, well, it's important, but I think sometimes we could be on this platform, and I'm Pamela. First and foremost, that's how I was christened, and that's how I'm going to die on the back. It was Pamela. So surname might change, I hope. But
now, how do you feel, for example, who's going to ask your oral history and what would it have in it?
It's really strange you should say that, because we're doing a project at the moment where we've just done a dementia box that covers information that relates to my age group, because I'm in my 60s now. So things that I can remember from young is like things like Jobblies. Some of you might remember Jobblies. Some of you might pretend that you don't remember Jobblies, but and sweets and food that I ate as a younger person that now don't exist. And I'm not saying that my memory would go back far back, but if it did, we've just put together boxes of things that relates to us, the old-fashioned bus tickets we've got up the machine. We got those sort of things. Think that relates to us. And we've all taken oral stories on videos and also on recordings, some of which is found in the British Library, so that we can actually know that they're archived. But you're right, I don't have kids, I'm not married yet. The kids bit's definitely out the window. But getting married can still be an option. So apart from my brothers and sisters, no. And the next generation are really not interested in your stories. So the problem you have is that there's a cut-off where the next generation don't want to hear that you went for what you went through school. So it's going to be a difficult time. So that's why groups like the Caribbean Social Forum is so important, because it means we've created something internally that we can use for our own resources and lend it to people outside, rather than people outside coming to take our resources and lend it back to us. You know, we need to have our own resources because it's about us. It's not about someone else taking it and they say, oh, we'll lend it to you and we'll charge you a fee. My story where you charge me a fee from that picture. And that's what happens now. The Windrush pictures are now being sold back to the Windrush generation, and it's their picture.
Yeah.
Getty's selling it to people like me. Saatchi selling it, and I'm thinking, those are my people. You're selling me my people's picture because we didn't have a camera. So in answer to your question, I don't know, but I'm hoping that the Caribbean Social Forum would outlive me so that I could be a recipient of it rather than just the person that's running it at the moment, and that's what I'm planning.
I think those younger people will be interested. I wouldn't worry.
Yeah.
I think the fact you've brought food, but you know, we've talked about other objects that have inspired people. I did something, I don't remember who's working year 7 and 8 today, but I did a thing with young people where we took our modern telephone and we laid out on 2 tables what that phone could do. And these year 7 and 8s were flabbergasted. You know, we had maps, we had obviously an old-fashioned telephone, we had a record player, we had all this stuff, and I felt more sorry for them in a way, that all they're going to have is, oh, I remember iPhone 5. Amazing, you know, whereas we had all this paraphernalia, and it made them appreciate that we had to have almost one thing at a time.
Yeah.
But it's the same with the food, it gets people talking. And
we just done a museum takeover. Sorry to cut you guys. We done a museum takeover on Saturday, the National Maritime Museum. It's the first time we've let a black-run organisation take over any museum in London. And the Caribbean Social Forum took over the whole of the National Maritime Museum. I think the figures I've got so far is about 7,000 people that attended on that day. And we tried to bring things that were images, but also the history against the images. So you see that they might have a head wrap on, but you don't know the history of it. So it wasn't just enough to do head wraps, it was about understanding the history to the head wraps and what was related. And it was amazing to see 4 or 5 generations of a family coming through the door, and they were all learning together. And if we could create more environments like that, then having a story like this would not be uncomfortable, it would be comfortable and it would be organic rather than just being forced upon someone. And we've gone into schools to talk to schools that's got a heavy population where they might not know their grandparents, and we talk to them at schools so they can ask questions. Again, it's organic conversation for something that's more personal than just reading it from a book. Yeah.
I've got a set of questions, or a question around access and archives, which kind of is a theme that's actually run throughout a number of the panels today, and you both touch on it. One from the Bijou Stories team about how archives can be impenetrable, so if you go into an archive, how actually you can get lost. And from your perspective, Pamela, the need to create an archive that is accessible for the people of the forum. And I just wondered if either party might expand on that kind of your kind of perspective of archives and the importance of archiving, but also the accessibility of archiving for different people.
From my point of view, I think it's really important that we make them as accessible as possible. As I said,
but you know, so we need to not put barriers to stop people from feeling that they should be able to free to ask whatever question they want to ask in whichever way they want to ask it. Because sometimes we could also put all these political correctness things, and once I think there is a need for it, I also think that sometimes that scares people to have an open dialogue with you because they don't know how to do that. Someone asked me, well, what do you want me to call? How should I call you? Black or brown or coloured? I said, Pamela, I prefer. Yeah. So we've got to sort of see how we can actually break down some of the barriers that we put up ourselves and stop people from going forward.
One last comment from the floor, which is Pam.
No, I just wanted to say, picking up from Kate, that I think there's a huge appetite in schools for visits from older people from the Caribbean community and other African community as well. I know that 10, 15 years ago, I had regular contact with a group called COFA, who I think don't exist anymore, Caribbean Over 50s Association. And they went into schools and initiated a program of work, and similarly with the African group, I think they may have also folded as well, where, you know, they taught the kids the songs from their country, the kids made plays about that experience, we published them in books. It is a very rich way to work, and when I was interviewing people about their motivation, transmission was the word that came up. They wanted to transmit their culture to young people in schools. And I remember feeling that it was very important, because these were role models that came into the classroom who looked like them and sounded like them, and told them things they didn't know before about their history and about where they were coming from and their families coming from. And I think it should be given a very high priority in curricular matters that schools think about what the role models are that they put in front of them, and how that can be hugely helpful for children in schools.
And a lot of children, especially a lot of young people often ask, why do I call it African and Caribbean Forum? Because I know very little about Africa to be a benefit to someone that's older that's from Africa. I know a lot about the Caribbean, and I'm not going to try and say that I do, but it doesn't stop someone from Africa coming into the forum. But it's not, I don't know enough about pounded yam or jollof rice or the language or the diet. I don't know enough, and if I want to be the best I could be for the people I'm dealing with, I do what I'm good at rather than try to take on everybody. And you're right, that school, a lot of young people, we went to a school recently, they didn't have any grandparents. So it was for them to talk to an older man like Gilbert, who's 96, and he's one of the oldest Caribbean veterans left from World War II, because he was here from 1944. It was a shock to them to know that there was someone like that in existence. And he only walked down the Cenotaph 2 years ago because we contacted the British Legion. So imagine that he was here all this time fighting the war and never got the chance to walk down the Cenotaph until we presented him there. And he was the only veteran that still had his faculties to talk recently at Sandhurst, in fact last year, and at 96 years old. So there is opportunities, but you can see that I've got stints. I've popped myself up with painkillers today, so that's why I can sit here looking like this. But other days I'm not like this, and therefore I can't do as much as I like to do. And therefore it means trying to do what we can, but what we do, we try to maximise it and make it work. Yeah.
And on that
No.
note, I'd like to draw a close. Thank you very much.